enough. We're fighting, baby. We're fighting. All right. Godzilla vs. King Kong just came out. You can watch it in theaters right now. It's also on HBO Max. Even still, I'd recommend you watch this in theaters because it's badass. I'm going to jump right into the good. This is the most exciting American Godzilla so far. Not the best, but the most exciting. That 1998 Matthew Broderick one? I'm just kidding. That doesn't even count. The 2014 Bryan Cranston one? That one definitely had the most style. And the story was even pretty good. And honestly, it was a great introduction into what would go on to become the American Monsterverse. But most of the fighting was off screen, or it was done in the dark. So the main event of the movie was a bit of a letdown. The 2019 follow-up, King of All Monsters, that one just got too big for its own good. There were way too many monsters, nothing really came together very well. It was just kind of a mess. And they had a similar problem where a lot of the fighting was obscured in darkness. And that's what made Godzilla vs. Kong so good. The fighting was the main focus, and you actually got to see it. And even the fight scenes that didn't take place in daytime, there was always enough lighting in the environment to be able to see what was going on. I mean, that's a big move in the right direction. And I hope they stay the course, because I don't want to see another sequel that just takes place in the dark. The CGI looks fantastic. King Kong and Godzilla both look better than they ever have. And it's not just those two. There are these little bird creatures. Well, they're giant, but compared to King Kong and Godzilla, they're tiny. They looked so good. And there were a few close-ups where I actually had to do a double take because I thought they were using practical effects. Kaylee Hoddle, I hope that's how you pronounce her name. She's an amazing child actor. Keep your eye on this girl because, wow. She played the deaf girl with the close relationship to King Kong, and her performance is so heartfelt. She made their relationship so convincing, and she was easily the best human character in the movie. The pacing in this movie, it was great. There were plenty of new environments and subplots to keep the momentum going. It really kept the movie from getting too boring. For instance, they visit another world. I won't say anything other than that, just in case you haven't seen the movie. But if you have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, I don't know how else to explain it. They visit another world. Kong even gets a really cool new weapon. And we even get like an interesting subplot that is very similar to Pacific Rim. And I like all of these additions into the Monsterverse. But I do have some concerns, and that's where I'm going to go into the bad. I'm worried that this trend of adding new things into the Monsterverse is going to take on a life of its own, and before you know it, we're just going to be getting stuff that's so unbelievable and stupid. And this kind of already happened in this one. Godzilla has the ability to like sense where other monsters are on the planet. At the same time, his atomic breath is powerful enough to bore a hole straight through Earth. So why not just have him point his head in the direction that he senses the monster and uses atomic breath? You see what I mean? If the writers go too crazy with what can be done, then it leaves them with too many loopholes in logic that it takes all the fun away. Another thing that bothered me about this movie is when King visited the other world, the humans came along for no other reason than just to watch him do what he did and then say out loud what he did. It's such a lazy way to get the audience on board. I mean, they never even helped him. Kong got there on his own and he left on his own. They just were chasing after him. And that really bothers me in movies in general, where we see a character do something and then we get some third-party character who's also watching just say out loud what happened.
I'm going down there.
He's going down there. I wouldn't.
It just seemed especially out of place in this movie because they had to invent like a whole new piece of technology just to allow the humans to follow Kong. And since we're on the topic of humans, they're just as paper thin as you could imagine. Other than just like a couple characters, everybody else in this movie was so forgettable. We had that deaf girl who was a legit good character, and we had like a podcaster who somehow managed to break into some secret underground facility with the help of some kids. It was stupid. Other than that, none of the characters were memorable in any way. The deaf girl had some like woman looking after her.
I knew that they had a bond. I made a promise to protect her.
Like, was it her older sister or like her mother? I had no idea who she was. Even the podcaster was lame. He had like a lot of personality quirks and a lot of screen time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to tell him apart from anybody else either. It was funny because at the end of the movie, people were reuniting and they were hugging and happy. And I was like, who are you? It also bothered me that King Kong wasn't portrayed as powerful or as strong as I would have liked. When we meet him, he's just like lounging around lazily. He's in a giant cage that he can't even get himself out of. I mean, can you imagine Godzilla stuck in a giant cage? Yeah, me neither. After he's taken out of the cage by the humans, he's chained to a ship and taken to where he needs to go. And along the way, Godzilla shows up.
It's Godzilla.
And I kept expecting him to rip the chains off of the ship and then, like, use them and take out Godzilla. But we never got that. We had to wait for him to be unlocked by the humans. So Kong's overall power was a real letdown. I mean, this movie's no masterpiece. Most of the subplots involving the humans are just boring and forgettable. But when it comes down to what this movie set out to do, it does the job well. King Kong versus Godzilla had some epic fight scenes, and you can actually see them. It's worth watching. And in fact, if you can get to the theaters, even though it's on HBO Max, I'd recommend that because this is definitely a theater movie. Thanks for watching, everyone. My name's Kenny. And until next time, let's not just watch movies, let's talk about them too.